Welcome to our podcast, Take Life by the Horns.
And Take Noble.
Today we're discussing trauma bonds. So trauma bonds are very interesting, and it's an addiction to the trauma. So I was explained as the trauma is a gateway drug.
Yeah, this often stems from toxic types of relationships, and it really is an addiction due to the misuse of pain and pleasure within your relationship. And the abuser often uses tools such as gaslighting or love bombing to create the extreme highs of the pleasure and the extreme lows of the pain that creates this cycle of addiction that you're craving those highs.
So basically, an emotional bond arising from a cycle of abuse. When reading this, I thought about those addictions that I have. An addiction to caffeine, an addiction to TV, an addiction to food. And then there's, larger addictions to alcohol and drugs. It all starts with initially a great hit, a great high. The first time is always the best. And looking for that again and chasing that high. When we talked about the trauma bond, that's what correlated with me. And it was just an aha moment of, this is an addiction. And we're always looking for it to be as good as it is in the beginning and not thinking about and not seeing all those lows. The crash you get from caffeine and nicotine, the hangover you get from alcohol, the weight that you gain from food. There's tons of lows, but we focus on that initial hit, that initial high, and we're chasing that high. That is a trauma bond, but in a relationship.
Yeah, usually these relationships start off with somebody utilizing the tool as love bombing as that extreme high. They usually love bomb you in the beginning of the relationship and give you that high and make you feel like you've never felt before, thinking this is the best person in the whole world. There could never be anybody better. They are showering you with compliments, showering you with gifts, showering you with attention, showering you with time. They give you everything your body could possibly crave and love. And it's hard to achieve that again.
Yeah. And so you're constantly looking for it because how amazing you felt getting all that attention, having all those words spoken to you, all those words you've wanted to hear. I love you. You're perfect. You're the woman of my dream. Everything is great. And then it slowly disappears and it slowly dissipates. And it can go both ways. So a trauma bond isn't always just one person that's the abuser. It can be both of them. And that's where we think, we have found our soulmate because you complete me, when it's a trauma bond that we're dealing with. Yeah. So trauma bonds, trauma itself releases a chemical reaction. So it is a chemical reaction in the brain, dopamine and oxytocin, and it's a loop. It causes an addiction to the trauma created, and that is the trauma bond.
Yeah, that's what was so profound for me as I started learning and discovering what trauma bond was. It is literally an addiction, a chemical addiction within your brain and your body. So like you said, you explained, it is no different than alcoholism, drug addiction, food addiction, shopping. But it's easy for me to equate it to alcoholism. Your body craves that. And it's not just an emotional addiction. It literally turns into a physiological addiction.
Due to the chemical release of oxytocin and dopamine. Oh my gosh. And it's hard to break those cycles. So we talked about love bombing, the energy we get, the constant love, but how long does that really last? Sometimes it's a week. I mean, it can be very quick, but constantly going back to that.
Yeah,
hoping for that.
It could be just a week that this person love bombs you. It could be months, but experiencing just a little bit, even for a week, you think there's got to be a way to get that back. It existed one time. There's got to be a way to find it again. And so you're constantly searching and striving to get that back.
If I'm happier, if I'm nicer, if I'm prettier, if I'm skinnier, if I don't bring up conflict, if I am the person that they want to be, if I change everything about myself to what they want, maybe they will love me again.
Yeah. What can I do to get it back?
Yeah. And then we lose ourselves in that. And that's the real sadness of a trauma bond, is losing who you really are, trying to please someone else, which takes us back to, which we always do in our podcast, codependency. And depending on those highs, chasing that high, let's talk about gaslighting. Gaslighting being devalued, because how do we get from loving ourselves, accepting all the love that they give us to the love bomb, to losing ourselves to just please them? It's gaslighting and devaluing.
Yeah. Gaslighting is when somebody tries to make you believe that something isn't what you perceive it to believe. So they start to make you doubt yourself, not trust yourself. You start to question your reality, question your thoughts, question your emotions, question your motives even. They will make you doubt everything. So when you start getting into gaslighting, then as you're trying to find your way back to that high and that love bombing stage, you're constantly searching and seeking and grasping for straws, trying to find that. And you can't even think straight because you don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah. If you feel like you've been gaslit, go and listen to our podcast, Am I the Narcissist? There's some things in there that might help you decipher if you're being gaslit. If you start thinking you are the narcissist, you may be dealing with a narcissist. But it is scary, and we can even gaslight ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had situations where I've had to stop and think, wait, like I've taken this so many different ways. I can't even think straight anymore. That's when I feel like maybe I've gaslit myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. We can gaslight ourselves. Absolutely.
So they keep us in there with the gaslighting and the manipulation. Just tons and tons of manipulations, emotional abuse, denial, constant denial. They aren't doing anything bad. They are still giving you all this love and appreciation. You just aren't perceiving it the same. You aren't accepting it. I'm never good enough for you. These are some of the things that you might hear.
Yep, exactly. It's all of those things. And it goes back again to the gaslighting. So you doubt yourself, even though they're telling you, no, I'm doing all these great things for you. No, I'm showing you love and attention. It's a complete lie. But now you're at a stage where you don't know what is real and what's not anymore.
Yeah. They contradict themselves. They lie. But the biggest thing is they're trying to control you. So the trauma bond, if you are being controlled by someone else, you're probably in a trauma bond.
Well, that is the tool that they use. It's often used by people who are very insecure, afraid of losing somebody. And so they create these trauma bonds so that you can't escape, so that no matter what they do to you, no matter what they say or what happens, you don't feel like there's any way out or that you can leave because you feel so attached and so madly in love. There's never going to be a connection like this. You're never going to have the extreme highs and love that you shared with this person. So it really is that manipulation tool to keep you with them so that they never lose you. And again, it can go both ways. Two people can use it in the exact same relationship. But oftentimes, too, it can be used in abusive, toxic relationships, one against the other.
I want to talk about that, the connection, and how you can be in a trauma bond with someone who's also in a trauma bond with you. So based on your past relationships, maybe how you were raised, you start to think that you're deserving of a certain relationship, a certain attitude, personality from somebody else. And when they give that to you, it's fulfilling that hole inside you.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think the problem with that sometimes is we get so addicted to that high that when we encounter other relationships, we don't think they're ever going to be as good.
Yeah.
We feel like they're boring. I don't really love you. You don't really love me because you're not giving me that high that I got in the trauma bond relationship.
When the high was a recovery from a deep low spot.
Yes.
So that's the key. Is it really a high, or is it just better than how low it was?
So we talked about crumbs.
Yes.
And so sometimes, the high really isn't high. It's just so much better than the low that you were in. It's so much better than the pain that you were experiencing before, that desperation that you had to get out of that pain, that misery, that low spot in your relationship. To get out of that anything seems higher and better than that. Does it really mean it's that great? No, it doesn't. But your body feels like it is. So it goes back to the physiological effects. It's not that great, but our body feels and thinks that it is that great.
So if you have healed from a trauma bond and you're in a relationship and you might be a little bored with it and think, oh, the sparks aren't there, I don't have the chemistry, before you leave that relationship, take a step back and think if you just aren't in that cycle and that loop anymore.
Yeah, that cycle of abuse, that cycle of, for lack of a better way, of accepting crumbs, right? If you've been in a trauma bond relationship long enough, you realize it doesn't take much, just a little bit to get that high, to get you out of feeling that desperation of not wanting to feel that pain anymore. And so often now it doesn't take much. Now it doesn't take what it took in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a song, and I'll put in the show notes a link to it, but it's called Mortified. It says, I should have been ashamed. I should have been mortified, but the crumbs from the table kept me satisfied.
Yeah.
And that is a trauma bond. That is in that I knew better, but those crumbs, they felt so great. So we need to learn to get away from accepting crumbs and take the whole loaf of bread.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? How do we break the cycle? It's an addiction. So remember that. And addiction, you could do an addiction replacement. A lot of people, the 12-step programs, it's replacing that addiction with something else. And I wanted to tell a story of my grandfather. So when my dad and his brothers and sisters were young, my grandparents were severe alcoholics. I didn't know my grandpa was an alcoholic because he quit drinking by smoking cigarettes. So he smoked like a chimney. And then he quit smoking cigarettes by chewing tobacco. Quit chewing tobacco by chewing gum. Quit chewing gum by eating sunflower seeds, and then broke sunflower seeds. This was when I was in elementary school, and it's always stuck with me. I always thought it was funny. It's like, oh, Grandpa needs his gum. Grandpa needs his sunflower seeds, and that he wanted to break that addiction of even the sunflower seeds. So it was small steps to get to where he wanted. He was able to replace an addiction to alcohol with sunflower seeds and then eventually not need anything. But it's those small steps, and it's finding something that we can be passionate about to replace that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Actually, you can use things that are a little bit healthier for you. You can take hikes. You can start yoga, go to the gym, kind of work out some of those emotions. It's a great thing to do. Yeah.
Some of the other ways, first, you need to be aware that you are in a trauma bond. So check the symptoms. Have you been love bombed? Are you in this cycle? Does the highs feel really high and the lows feel really low? So be aware of where you are.
Yeah, when you're feeling those lows, when you are desperate to do anything to get out of those lows, when you are searching for things that you can do to make your partner happy, to make them receptive to you, to stop causing the pain that they're causing, whether it's ignoring you and stonewalling you or dismissing you, when you're desperate to start that, you're probably in a trauma bond.
Yeah. And then sometimes to deal with that, we need to compartmentalize. So it's okay to put that somewhere else in your brain for a while. So you can tap into other space and other energies and focus on that.
Yeah, you really kind of have to put that aside and really recognize that it's not real, that it's not reality right now. And until you have time and space and the tools to deal with it, sometimes you just need to put that aside for a minute.
And one thing we can always do, and we always talk about it, set boundaries. Don't let people walk over you anymore. It is not your responsibility to make other people happy. It's not your responsibility to make sure they're in a good mood or not say something because they might be in a bad mood. Set some boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries are really hard because the lack of boundaries is what allowed you to get here. Mm-hmm. In reality, if you had healthy boundaries, the love bombing, the boundaries would have stopped the love bombing in the beginning because a lot of people overstep boundaries to love bomb you. So if you had healthy boundaries, the love bombing wouldn't have happened to begin with because the love bombing sometimes itself is very toxic because they cross boundaries to do that. So, and then allowing yourself to be gaslit, allowing yourself to question yourself and allow yourself to wonder if you are right or if you didn't perceive it the right way, that's where you know you have a lack of boundaries.
Yeah. face your feelings. It's hard to realize a situation that you've put yourself in those deep, hurtful feelings, and realize somebody has treated you that way and devalued you that way. It's time to face those feelings and not use food to cope with it, or use alcohol or any other addiction to cope with it. We got to get through these addictions and face our feelings, because there are going to be consequences if we don't.
Well, there's going to be a lot to heal anyways. So it's going to be a long, tough healing process to recover from trauma abuse. But you have to acknowledge, yes, exactly what you're feeling, and grieve those feelings. Yeah. Grieve the fact that you allowed yourself to be treated that way, and grieve the fact that the person that you truly thought loved you really didn't. And I'm sorry to say that, but it really isn't. And it's a really tough pill to swallow, and it's going to hurt, maybe more than the trauma bond.
Yeah. So when we're facing our feelings, you were talking about how we can have some consequences to that, our weight or issues such as that.
Yeah, a lot of times these trauma bonds can cause health issues. They can cause weight gain, they can cause depression, but they also can fatigue your adrenal system and affect your cortisol levels. So they really can affect your hormones. So losing weight's going to be hard. Cognitive ability is going to be hard. So a lot of those things start diminishing, which makes it even harder to deal with, harder to process our emotions, harder to decipher what kind of situation we are in.
Yeah. Validate yourself and find your value, because you're not going to find it in the other person. We're not going to get back to that love bombing stage. And if you do, it's going to be very short, just to start this cycle again. So being able to find the value in yourself, knowing that you are worthy of more, is a very important step.
Well, that's going to be the step that gets you out of the cycle, is knowing you deserve more.
Yeah. Get resources, help, find a professional. Sometimes this is more than you can handle. So there are different levels of trauma bond, and we are not professionals. We're not therapists. We are here just to educate you. If this is something that is ruining your life, something that you feel you cannot get out of, there are resources for you. There's professional help, and it is okay to ask.
Yeah. One thing you can do too is ask yourself how you're going to feel if you bring up an issue with your partner. If you have something that you need to discuss, an issue, a problem, a feeling that you need to discuss with your partner, and if you're feeling anxiety over that already, you're probably in a trauma bond with your partner. So those are really red flags for you to seek help outside of that relationship.
Yes, definitely. And you mentioned it already, but it's a really good point. And what I want to bring up again is grief. So grief is not just for people that have passed away. You can grieve a relationship. You can grieve the highs, the trauma. You can grieve it all. And it's important to do that. Journal, feel your feelings, know that it's going to get better, release it, but grieve it. Don't be afraid to have grief.
Yeah, I really understand this. And I know that thinking about getting out of those relationships and leaving those relationships, you think, I'm never going to find anybody who makes me feel this way. I'm never going to love anybody like this again. You may not even feel loved, but you might think to yourself, I'm never going to find anybody who loves me like this, right? I'm never going to find anybody who makes me feel this way. And to let that go is going to be hard.
Yeah. But very needed. And then we talked about it earlier, but find a passion. So all that energy that you've put into this addiction, to any addiction, find a passion that you can put into that energy into. It can be something extravagant. It can be something small. We talked about going to the gym. You've mentioned that, how the gym really helped you get away from some issues and just have a place where you can sort it all out.
Well, that's exactly where I go. If I have a bad day or a tough day and I'm having problems dealing with things, I go to the gym, and that's where I get out all my emotions. That's where I sit with myself. I process them, and I transmute them into a physical force. So that's a great for me, that's been a great tool.
Yeah. And for me, it's my animals, it's my rodeo bulls, it's my dogs, and it's also public speaking. I absolutely love that I have this ability to do a podcast with you, Candy, to talk to everybody. My passion is to empower people to talk about it. So this here is one of my passions that helps me get over some of the other addictions. So find a passion, whatever it could be. I have a friend, her passion is scrapbooking. You can find something that you love that you want to put everything into. I have another friend, she loves to read. So she reads a lot, and she's trying to find a way that reading can be a career for her. And I have full faith that she will find that. So find your passion.
Yeah, definitely put time into yourself.
Yeah.
That's key. Whatever you do, invest in yourself. Give yourself everything you're trying to give your partner that they're not receptive to and that they're not giving back to you. Yes. So give to yourself first.
Yeah. And be okay being alone until you can find who is worthy of you, so you don't just jump into another trauma bond. Heal yourself first.
Yeah, because that next relationship really is going to seem boring. It's not going to seem like it's going to fill your cup, because you're not going to have those extreme highs and lows. So you really are going to have to heal before you enter another relationship. This is not going to be the same.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point and something to remember. When you are healed, things feel differently.
Yeah.
Because the crumbs are now just crumbs. But it's worth it so much more when you're not in a dramatic relationship. You're not on the front porch yelling and screaming at each other, throwing your boxes to the left. Well, those are the relationships you want.
And I can say, as a woman who has recovered from trauma bond and who has remained single for a while now, if I do see somebody who begins to love bomb me, my boundaries are pretty staunch. So a lot of people try to cross those boundaries and overdo and overplease for you, thinking they will love bomb you and reel you in. And my boundaries now won't allow that. I will allow equal energy exchange between two people, but I won't let somebody give me more than I'm giving them in return in the beginning, because that's a red flag.
Yeah, that's great help. Thank you for that. So, we end our podcast with gratitudes. What is one thing you're grateful for today, Candy?
Well, I'm very grateful that I have healed myself from the trauma bond, because I think if you've listened to maybe previous episodes of ours, I have talked about breaking away from toxic relationships and really seeking help with therapists and desperately asking a therapist how. Because people on the outside think it's so easy just to leave a relationship. You're not happy, you're crying all the time, you're fighting all the time, you don't talk for a week at a time. It's simple to leave. And it's really not, because of that physiological addiction. So I personally am very happy and grateful that I have healed myself from those trauma bonds. And now I know what to expect in the future. How about you?
That's great. I'm really thankful for my passions, because I am a very passionate person. I have always have been, and that I'm able to use those passions to not get into addictions and trauma bonds such as this. And thankful for this podcast. As I said before, this is one of my passions, to be able to talk to you guys, to be able to empower women to learn as we grow together. So very thankful for that.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah. I love doing this. Like I said in the beginning, and I say this a lot, if you know me, I've said this for years. If I can help one person with my experience, I'm ecstatic to do so, because I know what it's like to be in those shoes and how tough it is and how heartbreaking it is and how hopeless you feel. And you sometimes feel like there's no way out and that you're really stuck, no matter how much you desperately crave for your partner to love you and want you and treat you like they did in the beginning. So thank you very much for being here with us.
Yeah, we're here for you. You are not alone. And if you are that one person, subscribe, comment, and hopefully there's more than one of you. But if there's only one, it makes it all worth it. Thank you, guys. Take life by the horns, where we are on a mission to empower 1 million women to step into their power, believe in their ability to live life of their dreams, and fearlessly take life by the horns.
Empowering women by their life lessons and manifestation skills, helping you reach your dreams faster. They did it. They'll show you how without making the same mistakes they did. One cowgirl, bull-raising childless wife with multiple businesses and streams of income who is manifesting her dreams into reality. She will help you with your weight loss and wealth goals, making you healthy and wealthy. One badass boy mom with a passion for energy, healing, health, and fitness. She will help you with healing and overcoming limited beliefs to manifest the life you've always dreamt. It's Tennille and Candace, taking life by the horns.